So back when I was in college, I was part of a comedy musical group called Reader and Virgin, where one of the 20 or 25 of us over the years would play the role of reader who knew everything about a specific piece of media. It could be a movie, a TV show, a video game, a meme, and most of the time I played the role of Virgin, the person who doesn't know anything about the thing we're doing the show on. I wasn't even allowed to read the script. I would be allowed to see the music if I was going to be singing that week, but I wasn't allowed to see the lyrics. So while there were jokes, most of the comedy was just me not knowing the source material we were parodying. So a little over a year ago, one of the only girls I still talk to from the group texted me to ask if I want to get at least a couple of people back together to do a Reader and Virgin parody of some old viral video when the electoral votes are presented. Specifically, she wanted me to juggle rainbow rubber balls in a pirate costume in the background of what we naively assumed would be Trump's concession speech. Obviously, I said no because A, I don't have a pirate costume and this is late December, so all the discount Halloween costumes are already gone. B, I can't juggle. I can't really do anything that requires coordination without a lot of practice, and this was like a week before January 6th, so there wasn't enough time. And 3, this was at a time when the number of people dying in the US of a partially airborne disease was being counted in acts of terrorism. So there was no way I was going to sit in a flying tube from recycled air for hours, or a series of confined spaces for a week to get from California to Washington, D.C. just to parody an old video I have never seen or even heard of. And I've tried to find this video, by the way. Like, I've tried to find breaking news presented by an out and proud pirate who juggles, but I've never found it. What I have found, though, are a bunch of videos on election misinformation, which I thought YouTube had cracked down on, but I guess not. And I understand that YouTube cannot and should not be the arbiter of truth. You know, this website is a platform, it's not a school, and it's definitely not an educational or informative authority of any kind. Its primary purpose is to make money by keeping your eyes on it for as long as possible. And I'm not going to put up thumbnails of video examples or talk about specific voter fraud claims because I didn't watch any videos, and I really can't comment on the content of videos I haven't seen because, I mean, you can call this a cop-out if you want, but I just don't have that much time, and I really don't want my YouTube recommended feed to be a bunch of cultists who probably eat horse paste and think the earth is flat. So, I mean, yeah, I am contributing to that eyes to money system right now, but there really isn't another video hosting platform with the level of reach that YouTube has. Oh my god, I've been rambling for almost 4 minutes. Okay, so the Dominion lawsuit is in the news again. And since we've almost reached the anniversary of the first smart decision I ever made as Virgin, I figured this is as good a time as any to say something. So, I was part of the Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters in 2020. Obviously, I'm not saying there was no voter fraud whatsoever. There have been. I'm also not saying there was no misinformation. There was. And I'm also not, and this is very important, I'm not presenting myself as an expert. If I were an expert, I'd be on TV. I wouldn't be making a video for YouTube. My job was to be an extra pair of hands and a translator if necessary. You saw in the thumbnail that my name tag is both English and Chinese. But as someone who saw the election firsthand, I wanted to explain to the best of my ability and as much as I'm legally allowed to, how it all works. Sorry about that. There are ambulances going around, probably because it's close to New Year's. Anyways, voting. So step 1 is presenting your first and last name and date of birth. We would look you up in our system and match you to an address so we know which precinct's ballot to give you. Because remember, there are a lot more things on the ballot than just the president. And arguably, these are even more important because the local measures and propositions affect your life directly, while the president and all the other representatives up at the federal level have to jump through like a gazillion hoops to do anything. And I'm getting off topic again. So if our system didn't already have a ballot counted for you, because remember this was after some mail-in ballots were already counted, we would print out a little slip of paper for you with a code so you could get a new ballot printed for you at the next station. Then step 2 would be grabbing either a marker or a pen from the clean box and a secrecy folder to cover your ballot with when you're done. And step 3 would be getting the ballot to a private booth and voting as normal. I mean, it's not really that any different than previous years, except for the booth being measured to be at least 6 feet apart. Anyways, when you're done, you put your used marker or pen into a specially marked box for sanitizing, stuff like that. Yeah, so if you wanted to vote electronically, the second step would be different. We would do the same identification process, but when it's time to direct you to the second station, instead of getting a ballot printed for you, you get a little card to insert into the machine so that the screen would display the correct ballot measures for your area. And then you'd vote like the screen was a ballot, and you'd use either, I'm blanking on the name. It looks like a pen, but it's got a little rubber nub at the end. You know, you use it for touch screens. Anyways, you'd use one of these, or you'd have like a handheld device, kind of like a video game controller. You know, that was for the visually impaired. You could, because we also had headphones, so you could control the volume with it. You could control the speed at which the lady talked, and all the buttons felt different, so you wouldn't have to see to know what you were pressing. I'll link a more in-depth version of this machine in the description because this video is way too long already. And plus, honestly, English isn't my first language, so I'm not really sure how some of the words are pronounced. Just basically, you could vote with a screen instead of a paper ballot, but at the end, you would still get a sheet of paper from the printer next to the machine that you could put into your secrecy folder and take to the vote counting machine. And anyways, if something went wrong, you could see it in the sheet and ask for help fixing it before submitting it to the tabulator, which would be step 4, whether you voted on a screen or with paper. So you would insert your ballot in any orientation into the machine, and the screen would then read one of 3 results. It would either tell you ambiguous ballot, meaning it can't read at least one result that you put in, and you could choose to either cast it anyways or return it so you could fix it. You get overmarked ballot, which is when you've marked more options than you were allowed to in a specific category, like if you marked both Trump and Biden, or if you marked one and wrote in a separate candidate, because you can only vote for one person in the category of president. And third, if after a few seconds, the machine went back to the system ready message, that meant that your ballot was counted. And you could go and you could get your sticker, which is, I think, everybody's favorite part. Anyways, at the end of the night, the secure encrypted memory cards, I'm not sure, would be removed from the machine with at least 2 people witnessing and taken somewhere in a bag of... I wasn't actually there for that part because, you know, like I said, I was there as a translator, so they didn't ask me, and it was late, so I just wanted to go home. And I never actually saw this process, but I was told about it during voter training, or during a election worker training. I'm also pretty sure I just massively oversimplified the 3 results, and I completely skipped over the way the tabulator functions because I don't know how it actually functions. I may live in the heart of Silicon Valley, but you don't learn coding from osmosis, and believe me, I've tried. So the concerns over electronic voting have been discussed by people who are much smarter than me, but the main similarity I've seen is worrying that the machine will count votes differently than what is actually printed on the paper. But to paraphrase computer science professor Wenka Lee, just because a cybersecurity system isn't foolproof doesn't mean someone broke into it. Multiple election and government officials have released a joint statement testifying to the validity of the election results. So I'm going to link that in the description as well, and any articles I screenshotted and the article with the professor whom I just quoted. So there you have it, a step-by-step guide to the voting process in the county where I worked, a little explanation on how electronic voting works on the mini machines, and credible sources affirming the results of the 2020 election. Like, honestly, if you wanted to vote twice, it'd be a lot easier to just fill out 2 paper ballots at your own house. Like, no one would witness that, but, you know, because there isn't really a lawsuit claiming that. If one comes up, I guess I could do another one of these. I don't know. I'm not a YouTuber. I only made this because I don't see a lot of AAPI faces talking about the political process, and I think there should be. So this is me being the change I want to see in the world. So just to end this on an upbeat and very American note, the friend I have who lives near DC did end up going to the Capitol on January 6th. She brought a rainbow flag because she also doesn't know how to juggle, a camera to capture the moment, and a freaking chainsaw. Now, I'm not sure if this was a working chainsaw, like it actually cut things, but the reason I know about the chainsaw to begin with is because she had an encounter with a writer who thought she was a member of the press. Because as we all know, the most professional CNN journalists carry GoPros. Anyways, this chucklehead thinks she's part of whatever deep conspiracy they're coming up with on 8chan and flashes his gun at her. At which point she takes out her chainsaw, he backs off, she leaves, goes home with Sam's video parody. She's safe, thank goodness, and she's asked me to never talk to her about this again. But she's never mentioned talking about this to other people, so yeah. Bye!